Without further ado, let's get started with today's topic. I'm joined with Mr. Vishal Salvi, the CISO of Infosys. So thanks so much for joining us today, sir. So when it comes to deciding IT budgets and the way it's invested, how do you think the responsibility should be split between CIOs and CISOs, and how can they collaborate better?
Thank you so much for having me here today. And see, the way the cybersecurity as a function or a topic has evolved, clearly it started with the head of technology, CIO or head of IT, playing a very important role. But as the technology landscape has grown and as the security architecture has grown, there is a clear role that has to be played by the CISO in terms of taking decisions, in terms of what needs to be the right, optimal, effective architecture with respect to cybersecurity, which intertwines well with the technology architecture of an organization.
Right.
And that is where the need to have a very strong collaboration between the CIO and the CISO, right? Now, when you look at this evolution, there are a lot of technologies which are very specific to IT and closer to IT, because we have a situation where technologies like firewall or technologies like antivirus, which are highly commoditized, right? And so there's not much value that the CISO can add over managing those technologies. When we talk about niche technologies like your SIM or your threat intelligence platform or data loss prevention platforms, and so on and so forth, these are very niche technologies, and these need to be managed end-to-end by the CISO. So what we are seeing is that when we look at in terms of budgets, ownership, accountability, and how these technologies should be managed, then there is clear evolution which is happening in terms of the niche technology being owned and managed and sponsored by the CISO, but the commoditized solutions to be managed, delivered by the CIO.
Again, just taking off from the last point that you mentioned, you talked about, a lot of investments in SIM solutions. A lot of CISOs are also investing in XDR and ZTNA at this point in time. Now, these are significant investments. As a CISO, sir, what would be your, top takeaways for your fellow CISOs when it comes to investments in the newer technologies, especially ZTNA and XDR?
First, I will try to give an answer which is more broader and generic in terms of what should be the approach. And I think, every time you look at any investment, you should ensure that there is a strong foundation of risk assessment, which is done for your organization in terms of what are the most important cybersecurity risks and what is the decision on remediation of that within your organization. And once you've kind of done that analysis, which is bottoms up, then you take a decision on which are the investments that you want to prioritize for the highest number of risks that you have in your organization. So that's number one. Now, when it comes to then taking decisions, we'll talk about XDR or things related to that. Then I think it's an evolution, right, of how we look at cybersecurity solutions and cybersecurity technology. So we had first endpoint protection, which is EPP, and then we talked about EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. And now when you talk about XDR, we are talking about an extended detection and response, which not only looks at endpoint, but it looks at holistically your network and cloud and everything else, right? But it also is a fundamental shift towards how we are looking at technology itself, in the sense that, what is the decision making which is happening on the edge, and what is the decision making that is happening on the central console, right? And what happens is every 3 years or every 5 years, the industry actually does a refresh of how we look at security architecture. Now, the reality of our business is that is that is something which is not going to change. And so every 3 to 5 years, there is a need for the CISOs and the CIOs to do this refresh because there's no way out.
Right.
You got to keep, because if you start continuing to manage your legacy, then very soon you will start realizing that the threats are manifesting back into your environment. So you got to do that. So that's what I would say in terms of how you embrace new technologies and what is the right time for you to embrace those technologies.
Great points there, sir. All right. Now, coming to another, recent phenomenon, another idea that we are seeing a lot of organizations adopt, and that is the shift left philosophy. Now, traditionally, CISO empowerment that has typically been around, leading security operations, security tools and solutions, etc. And operations such as DevOps, etc., has been led by the CIO. Now, with secure DevOps taking so much of significance, could you clarify, how do CIOs and CISOs collaborate better and start, building secure products?
So first of all, my view on this is that why only shift left? You should shift for cybersecurity. You have to shift everywhere, right? And you need to democratize cybersecurity. So what do I mean by that is that when we created this function called cybersecurity, everybody thought, and everybody even right now thinks that now that we have a cybersecurity team, they will solve all our problems, right?
Right.
And I think that's a mistake because cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Unless each person understands that responsibility fully and takes responsibility and accountability, as the case may be, you would not be able to really make it effective cultural situation in your organization, right? And so therefore, democratizing cybersecurity is very important. And whether it is shifting left, whether it is shifting right, whether it is shifting upwards along with to your leadership and to the board, and shifting downwards to your organization as a whole to create a culture. So I think we need to do all of that. But specifically to answer your question, when you talk about shift left, it's all about empowering and enabling the IT teams to be independent of cybersecurity and be self-sufficient to run security ops without intervention. Now, traditionally, the way the model has been evolved is that we have this maker-checker notion, right, where IT will do the making and security team will do the checking. But what happens is that it creates a lot of overheads, and it works like a kind of a waterfall model, and as a result, what happens is that you create a lot of bureaucracy, and as a result, you lose your agility. Mm-hmm. So basically, shift left means that you remove all that bureaucracy from the system. You make the IT teams and the information system teams fully empowered with every knowledge that is required, every skill that is required for them to run the security tools on their own. They have the full understanding and knowledge of how to identify gaps and how to remediate gaps, how to develop code in a secure manner, all of that, and getting it right first time. So enabling all of that so that the dependency on the security team to do the final check becomes like almost like a formality. It should not become a bottleneck. So that is, in my mind, what shift left truly really means.
And continuing on the topic of empowerment, Vishal sir, you've had a front side view to how cybersecurity has evolved in Indian organizations. Now, could you talk about the empowerment in large Indian organizations? Are CISOs adequately empowered at this point? Also, what are the areas of opportunity? Where else can we look for more CISO empowerment?
The empowerment of a CISO is a completely different topic altogether, and very different from what we were talking about when we talk about shift left and empowering the IT teams.
Right.
And it basically is about positioning the CISO at a level where the CISO is in the best position to influence the change in the given organization, right? And is fiercely independent to drive the change without getting overpowered by the need for functionality or business speed or various other things. So you can't compromise on security objectives uh, for all of these reasons, right? You need to basically make sure that they are complementary to each other and they go hand in glove. So independence is very, very important. Positioning is very, very important. Um, Sponsorship is very important. And all of these are required for you to be able to have an empowered CISO. Of course, when you do all of these things, you also need a capable CISO, right? Who's able to drive that conversation at the board level, at the leadership level, at his team's level, and also for the team as well, right? So I think that is the really way you look at it. I do believe that there are some great CISOs that we have globally as well as in India. And I also do believe that there is scope for getting more and more talent from different parts of the industries, different functions, so that we are able to nurture and uh, build a strong CISO community and leadership within the country.
Now, coming to the role of cybersecurity, now we know for a fact that cybersecurity is a tough job. It's hard for the CISOs, it's hard for the SOCs and the security teams as well. Now, we've seen CERT rolling out new, rules about, incident logging, incident reporting, etc. And, some industry players have highlighted that it could be an added burden for the CISOs who are already burdened with a lot of things at this point in time. So, in your opinion, sir, can a better CIO-CISO collaboration help ease that burden for CISOs? Or it does not even have to be about collaboration. What can CISOs do to actually ensure that they're able to comply without having to spend too many man hours or energy in this?
In general, any organization where the CIO and CISOs are collaborative, you are able to make your security operations that much more efficient. Right. Uh, Whenever get caught into politics and power centers and other things, then it actually is detrimental to the overall goals of your organization. So I think my message to the board and the leadership of every given organization is to make sure that they do not allow such bureaucratic process or non-collaborative situation to prosper in any given organization. And that is the role of the senior leadership to make sure it is working very well, because that argues well for the organization. So that's number one, right? Number two, I think see, from a compliance point of view, my view is that anything that you do in compliance should be aligned to finally improve and betterment of the security posture of a given organization. Compliance for the sake of compliance and checklist approach or a tick box approach is not really will not really add value to the regulator or to the auditor or to the company. So you need to make sure that you're putting all efforts that the compliance work that you're doing is aligned with overall improving the security posture of a given organization. So that is number two, right? Number three, I think there is the point that we were talking about, right? The role of the CISO is now very clearly evident. And I think that needs to be recognized and that needs to be empowered. I think the more you're able to do it, the more effective the CISO can be to execute all the expected obligations that the organization has in terms of meeting the compliance. But also, I think more than compliance, I think there are two words I would say, First word is about assuring the stakeholders, and the second word is increasing the transparency of how you do security operations with your stakeholders. I think assurance and transparency both are very critical factors. And the more you are able to work towards that, I think the overall ecosystem will put a lot of faith and trust in you in terms of how you govern and manage cybersecurity.
What are the common areas of friction that could normally arise between a CISO's role and a CIO's role? Traditionally, I mean, doesn't have to be your organization specifically, but then typically, where could a certain bit of friction evolve, and how can that be managed better?
See, at a very grassroots level, right? You know that anybody who gives you work which is not your boss, you don't like it. You hate it,
Mhm.
right? Why should anybody else give you work? Unfortunately, the cybersecurity teams generate a lot of work for the CIO teams, right?
Right.
And so while they're trying to help and they're trying to finally make the organization secure, but it becomes additional work and burden for them. And especially when the CISO cybersecurity team is not your boss or they don't report to you, they hate it, right? So, so one needs to create an environment where we are able to kind of diffuse this kind of a situation and tell them, it's not that we take any joy in creating work for you. It is more about, um, you know, what is right thing for your organization. And if we don't give it to you, and if there is some incident happen, then it's going to be a big problem for you eventually. I
Right.
think that is the first thing that I think one needs to make everybody understand, right? The other thing could be in terms of, the point that we talked about is about, who is owner for which technologies,
Mhm.
right? And if there is not adequate effort being spent in creating a proper RACI matrix, what I mean by RACI matrix is creating a matrix which will talk about who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed.
Right.
So you create that RACI matrix and define that very clearly and get the sign off from the senior most person within your management, and then say that this is how we are going to operate. So then there is no trauma or heartache of saying, is this my job, is this your job, because we already defined it.
Correct.
Then you just focus on execution. So
Mhm.
I think any organization where this is not very clearly defined causes a lot of friction, because somebody will say, why are you stepping on my toes, or why are you asking me to do something, right? Both of the things can happen. So I think clear roles and responsibility is the solution for that, right? And the third thing is about, finally, uh, the sense of control. Who controls what, right? And and you could have a situation where the IT team will say that, what, we are controlling this technology, and now why are you coming and defining what we need to be doing? So the control part also needs to be, if there is too many people trying to control a particular technology or something, then you might create a friction. So these are some examples why friction can come into between these two teams.
Just to state an example, sir, let's say your organization is moving towards zero trust, and that is something that a CISO is actively pursuing. Now, for that, you're going to need ZTNA, you're going to need microsegmentation. So a lot of architectural changes also has to be made in the IT infra. So typically, who leads these kind of transformations? Would it be the CIO's job, or would the CISO included in the zero trust adoption cycle?
See, the primary ownership of driving this is with the CISO,
Mhm.
okay? Because finally, it's a security topic, right? But then it is impossible to drive this change without the buy-in of a CIO.
Right.
So the CISO needs to make sure that they get the CIO onboarded on this agenda fully.
Mhm.
And then it has to be driven as a joint exercise. It cannot be done by one team and supported by other. It has to be a joint initiative, because microsegmentation, ZTNA implementation is actually converging security and network security together. It's converging in lot many ways.
Right.
And unless you do fundamental shift in the way you do networking architecture, you will not be able to implement these concepts.
Mhm.
So, so therefore, it has to be a joint and a collaborative approach. It cannot be just done by one team.
So, Mr. Savi, that's pretty much all the questions I had for you. Your answers were really, really good. Thanks so much for that. You've discussed the topic of CISO empowerment. We've discussed security transformations, especially zero trust, and problem areas where conflicts could arise. And I think you've shared some key takeaways that can eliminate a lot of this friction and enable the CISO to perform his job better. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate that, sir.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And Vishal, sir, I mean, yeah, so that was the end of this particular interview. There's another thing that while I just have you on call, I was also, exploring a topic of a lot of companies actually marketing zero trust as a product, not as a concept. So what are some of the things that you've seen? What kind of practices IT vendors or security vendors normally adopt that is actually misleading in certain ways?
See, this is not new, right? Because as much as the industry is trying to do the right things, there will always be, people who will try to sort of dilute or misinform to promote their solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and sometimes it's also about giving their own perspectives or their own take on what a particular concept means to make sure that they are able to again make a business case for their solution.
Right.
Right now, take an example of zero trust. Zero trust obviously has been one topic where everybody seems to have a right and a claim on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it has caught everybody's imagination because of the way the phrase is so catchy, right? Like, for example, if you take a step back,
Mm-hmm.
we what we do is information security, but nobody talks about information security anymore. Everybody talks about cyber security because of that phrase is more catchy as compared to information security.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas actually we are doing the same thing, in my mind at least. So
Right.
similarly, zero trust is something which is a new catchphrase, and it's a concept, no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
But then a lot of the things that we talk under the hood of zero trust is something that we have been practicing and following as a security industry for many years,
Right.
right? So I think this will continue to exist. It's up to us as practitioners to actually cut the clutter and then pick up what is the most relevant thing out of that. That is also part of our job,
Right.
right?
Right.
And not get swayed away by these different confusing messages and different signals. So that's my broad point. But I think specifically for zero trust, then I think what we're really talking about is, given the fact that now technology has diminished all the borders and perimeters that existed,
Mm-hmm.
and when we talk about any connectivity, any device from anywhere at any place, what we are really talking about is the one whole homogeneous ecosystem of technology, network, cloud, internet,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And various things being available. So in this large, humongous information highway, uh, you need to figure out a different way to protect yourself as compared to your traditional model where you had full control over your network, your LAN, and your data center,
Right.
right? And because of that, you come out with the new concept and new notion of how do you achieve that. Now, each vendor has their own method of how to deal with this, and they are perfectly right in their own way,
Right.
right? So one technology looks at it from a point of view of building uh, a network ecosystem which will allow you to have that secure connectivity tunnel. Another
Right.
one looks at completely differently. But they are, at the end of the day, all of them are endeavoring and trying to achieve same objectives, right? To make sure the devices and the connectivity is secure in this homogeneous environment right now, correct? And so if I had to go into very deep details of it at an identity level, at a network level, at a device level, at a data level,
Mm-hmm.
right? At all of these constructs, you need to build some layers of security controls. So at a identity level, you build second factor authentication. At a data level, you do rights management and encryption. At
Mm-hmm.
a network level, you do encryption, tunneling, and we can do micro segmentation. You can do nano segmentation, and all of those things. And at a host level, you can do host-based detection, and all of that. So all of these technologies always existed. They're getting better and better.
Right.
Once we start building all of these components, then you start really delivering the objectives of zero trust.
Understood. That's a great explanation, sir. All right. Thanks again.
All
Thanks so
right.
much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye bye.